Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Leaders around the world are calling for restraint following an attack by the Islamic Republic in Iran, which sent hundreds of missiles and attack drones into Israel. We hear from our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari on what is next for the Jewish state following the malicious attack by the Islamic Republic. And the federal budget is set to come down on Tuesday. Will it be balanced? The federal director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation weighs in with his thoughts.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Despite calls for restraint from world leaders, the head of the Israeli military says the country is going to respond to Saturday's missile and drone attack from the Islamic Republic in Iran. Officials say they are considering their next steps. Britain's Prime Minister says all sides must show restraint right now. British Foreign Secretary David Cameron, meanwhile, says the attack by the Islamic Republic on Israel was almost a total failure, despite hundreds of missiles and drones which were launched.
I totally understand those in Israel who want to see more, but I think this is a time to think with head as well as heart, and to be smart as well as tough. And I think the smart thing to do is actually to recognise that Iran's attack was a failure. And we want to keep the focus on that, on Iran's malign influence, and actually pivot to looking at what's happening in Gaza and getting those hostages released, including, of course, the British nationals, who've been there over 6 months.
U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken says his government is not looking to see the war between Israel and Iran escalate, but says the United States will help Israel defend itself against the Islamic Republic in Iran.
Over the weekend, as you know, Iran launched hundreds of missiles and drones against Israel. This was an attack unprecedented in its scope and in its scale. In its scope because it represented the first direct attack by Iran on Israel. And in its scale because, as I said, there were more than 300 munitions fired, including ballistic missiles, as well as land attack cruise missiles and drones. Thanks to Israeli air defenses, as well as support from other countries, including U.S. military assets, virtually all of the incoming projectiles were destroyed and shot down. As President Biden underscored to Prime Minister Netanyahu, the U.S. is committed to Israel's defense. And I think what this weekend demonstrated is that Israel did not have to and does not have to defend itself alone when it is the victim of an aggression, the victim of an attack.
Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari from the Foreign Desk in Los Angeles says it's not the people of Iran who want war with Israel, but instead it's the Islamic Republic, the military regime inside of Iran. She says it's very important to differentiate between the two.
Not only is Israel at war with the government of Iran, the people of Iran are also at war with their government. So they don't want to be associated with this war. They're not at war with Israel. They're not at war with the United States. And for 45 years, the people of Iran have been the victims of this regime. Just like right now, the rest of the Middle East, particularly Israel, is at war with the government in Iran. So for that reason, we make the differentiation. In terms of strategy, we've also emphasized this differentiation because it would be a loss to the free world to abandon the people of Iran, who could be a great ally for us in this fight against extremism, against terrorism, against the government that funds all the terror proxies in the Middle East and is responsible for much of the global crises we're seeing right now.
Foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will have more on the war between the Islamic Republic in Iran and Israel coming up in the second half of our broadcast. Well, we were well above our seasonal values today, and our average here in southwestern Alberta, which was around 13 degrees. Jeanette Rocher is now with a quick peek at the forecast. Jeanette, the warm temperatures may be leaving us for a bit, however, and more moisture may be on the way?
Yeah, Hal, so an abrupt change to the weather is on its way for southern Alberta tonight as we are under a special weather statement. So what we're seeing is a cooler air mass reaching the area from north of Calgary right towards the Saskatchewan border and the U.S. border, bringing with it mixed precipitation. So we're talking rain and snow. Now the areas closer to the U.S. border, like us, we're going to see longer durations of rain before that rain transitions into snow, whereas areas like Calgary Surrey, we'll start to see snow developing this evening. So this evening in Lethbridge, we're seeing a 30% chance of showers, and then tomorrow rain, and then Tuesday night, that's when that rain should transition to snow. As far as accumulations, it's still a little uncertain, but we could see areas that are getting 5 to 10 centimeters of snow between those amounts. So it's going to be a little bit of a wet, a snowy one this week, not feeling like spring at all, but I'll be back later in the show to tell you about the weather across the nation. Hal?
And to think I was going to take off my snow tires. Thanks so much, Jeanette. Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre took another shot at the Trudeau government during question period on Monday. Poilievre says the constant spending by the federal government is really hurting so many Canadian families.
They're not worth the cost, and now their deficits are driving up the interest obligations for the average family. For a family with a $500,000 mortgage, deficits are adding 10 grand in additional interest payments per year. When will they realize that after 8 years, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost?
He wants to talk about homes that don't exist. Perhaps we should look at the 800,000 affordable housing units that were lost while he was housing minister. Perhaps we should examine the fact that while he was minister, 0 new apartments were supported by the federal government and a total of only 6 affordable housing units nationwide. Now, he likes to talk a big game, but let's look at the plan he's putting on the table. He wants to raise taxes on home construction and cut funding for the cities that are making it easier to build home. We've advanced programs that are not just going to build more homes, but allow people to save up more money with their down payment and reduce their monthly mortgage costs when they go to join the housing market.
Well, the federal budget is coming out on Tuesday, but it doesn't appear once again that it will be balanced. To chat about this in more detail is the federal director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, Franco Terrazzano, who joins us once again from Ottawa. Franco, the parliamentary budget officer, is forecasting a deficit of $41 billion this year. Now, you say the feds have no plan in place to actually balance the budget?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a real bad news budget for taxpayers. A massive deficit, going to be around $40 billion. Of course, that means more debt added onto the backs of Canadians' kids and grandkids to pay back. Under Trudeau, this federal government has already essentially doubled the entire federal debt. And what this means is that more money is being wasted on interest charges on the federal debt. I mean, you're probably expecting in this budget year for interest charges to be around $50 billion, which is almost or about the same amount of money that the federal government sends to the provinces in health transfers. But if you look at projections, I mean, in a couple years, in 2028, interest charges on the debt could surpass the revenue that the federal government collects from its sales tax. So in only a couple of years, every time you go to the store and pay the federal sales tax, well, every penny collected will be going to pay interest charges on the federal debt. So totally unsustainable. And really, it appears like the Trudeau government doesn't really care about fiscal responsibility or helping taxpayers.
So, Franco, let's say you have the ear of Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland. What advice would you give her on where the federal government really needs to cut back?
First, stop wasting so much money, like when the federal government spent $8 million building a barn at Rideau Hall. Or, when Trudeau last fall spent $2 million on a 6-day trip to the Indo-Pacific region, where they racked up almost $200,000 on airplane food. But you also got to do the big things right. Cut down on the ballooning bureaucracy. The Trudeau government has added about 100,000 new bureaucrats, has handed out like $1 billion in bonuses, and also stop the corporate welfare. Right? We've heard the feds announce tens of billions of dollars in corporate welfare to build these battery plants. You know what? If you want to grow the economy, you should cut taxes, cut red tape, and cancel the corporate welfare.
He's the federal director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, Franco Terrazzano. Thanks so much for joining us today from Ottawa. A number of medical experts held a news conference in Ottawa to discuss their concerns about decisions made by the Canadian Task Force on Preventative Health Care. One cancer doctor from Montreal says more needs to be done for those who are battling the deadly disease, including prostate cancer.
Unfortunately, I'm faced with treating too many patients dying of prostate cancer on a daily basis due to delayed diagnosis. Yes, we have made great strides with new therapies that give patients hope and are keeping our patients alive longer that are unfortunately diagnosed with incurable disease. But the healthcare costs and enormous side effects for patients and their loved ones are truly disheartening. Most importantly, the pain and suffering due to end-stage bone metastatic prostate cancer is something no one ever wants to face for themselves or their loved ones. Prostate cancer is the most common cancer diagnosed in Canadian men, and unfortunately, the third leading cause of cancer death. Screening has proven to significantly reduce mortality. Yes, as the task force claims, there is a risk of overdiagnosis and treatment if all men are screened, biopsied, and treated. But Canada has led the way in not treating patients diagnosed with low-risk, non-life-threatening prostate cancer.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump says the hush money trial against him is basically an assault on America. The charges stem from a $130,000 payment Trump's former lawyer Michael Cohen made to adult film star Stormy Daniels at the end of the 2016 election to keep her from going public with an allegation that she and Trump had an affair.
Nothing like this has ever happened before. There's never been anything like it. Every legal scholar said this case is nonsense. It should never have been brought. It doesn't deserve anything like this. There is no case, and they've said it. People that don't necessarily follow or like Donald Trump said this is an outrage that this case was brought. This is political persecution. This is a persecution like never before. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. And again, it's a case that should have never been brought. It's an assault on America. And that's why I'm very proud to be here. This is an assault on our country.
The proceedings mark the first time a former U.S. president has faced a criminal trial. The trial is expected to last about 2 weeks. The Alberta government says it will invest about $8 million to help resolve family law issues a lot faster. Officials say the funding will increase access to pre-court services, including mediation and counseling for families seeking a divorce, parenting, or child support issues. Justice Minister Mickey Amory says this support will help ease some of the burden by helping Albertans navigate court processes more effectively or avoid them altogether.
Alberta's government recognizes the struggles everyday citizens have had with the family justice system. We have heard their concerns and we are taking action to address them. To help make things easier for Albertans, we have worked closely with the Court of King's Bench of Alberta and the Alberta Court of Justice on developing a simplified, streamlined, and integrated approach to family justice. Launched in Edmonton and Calgary late last year, the Family Justice Strategy creates a single point of entry for anyone seeking family law services. It also makes it clear, where appropriate, for families to address their matters outside the courts through mediation and other less adversarial methods. Since the strategy's launch in December, almost 9,000 Albertans have accessed services such as mediation or family court counselors. These services help people resolve their family law matters in a manner that emphasizes the well-being of the family, the well-being of the children, and can help families avoid the court process altogether.
Well, this is the beginning of National Volunteer Week. It's a time to really celebrate and thank the tens of millions of volunteers across our beautiful nation. Here in Lethbridge, a flag-raising ceremony was held to kick off the event. BCN's Naveen Day was there and has the details.
The National Volunteer Week flag was raised at Lethbridge City Hall Monday morning to kick off the week that honors volunteers across Canada. Amanda Jensen is the executive director at Volunteer Lethbridge. She says volunteerism is not just a soft and beautiful thing here in Lethbridge. It is a driving force to our community and economy.
I can tell you in Lethbridge that just over half of Lethbridge residents volunteer. And this just blows my mind. Of those people that do volunteer, they're doing it at about 90 hours per year. So it's a significant commitment. And it contributes annually $135 million. I'll say that again because it's unbelievable. $135 million volunteerism contributes to the economy in Lethbridge.
This year's theme for National Volunteer Week is Every Moment Matters. It was chosen to highlight the importance of every volunteer and each contribution they make at a moment when support is needed more than ever. In addition to festivities throughout the week, Jensen plans to hold serious discussions on employment and volunteering.
We're taking it in a bit of a different direction. We're doing a panel discussion and roundtable discussion on providing nonprofit employees a living wage and how that impacts nonprofit organizations and impacts their ability to absorb volunteers and be ready for them and provide the capacity that they need in order to support a volunteer program.
National Volunteer Week runs until April the 20th. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
Love and appreciate our volunteers here in the city. More funding is now available through the City of Lethbridge's Reimagine Downtown Activation Grant. The money supports initiatives, events, and programs that help to energize dormant, private, and public spaces. City officials say the first intake period say about 20 applicants requested more than $220,000. So far, 11 projects were approved, worth about $75,000. The second intake will run now until May 15th, with events awarded in June. Officials say around $45,000 is available in the second intake period. Events hosted in Galt Gardens Park will be eligible for funding for up to $15,000 per initiative. Events held elsewhere can qualify for up to $10,000 per event. You know, there are some items that every child needs growing up, and a bicycle is certainly one of them. Get their exercise. That's according to the Green and Yellow Group, which is hosting their annual Bicycle Barbecue fundraiser. They've been raising money for child bike donations for the past 8 years. This is their third year hosting a barbecue where they'll be presenting bikes to recipients. The group is hoping to raise $35,000 to purchase around 50 new bicycles for kids aged 5 to 16. Another $5,000 will be going to the Interfaith Food Bank. Sandy Gervais of the Green and Yellow Group explains the motivation behind starting this worthwhile fundraiser.
A long time ago, our neighbor, when he was younger, he used to just ride his bicycle up and down the sidewalk. Even when it was snowy, he'd like take his little shovel and he'd go and shovel the sidewalk so that he could ride his bicycle up and down the sidewalk. And we could just see how much joy it brought him. But he was definitely our motivation for it. And we just thought, you know, it brought him so much joy to be able to ride his bike. And I just think it's just such a healthy part of mental health. I mean, how many kids are in Lethbridge that don't have a brand new bicycle? How many kids are living in poverty that don't have a bicycle at all? A bicycle is a part of a childhood growing up. That's just, every child should have a bicycle.
This great event will be taking place May 25th in Legacy Park from 11 a.m. till 2 p.m. And if you'd like to donate a brand new bicycle, make sure you contact Green and Yellow Group through their Facebook page. Well, it's not exactly cycling weather over the next few days unless you have winter tires for your bicycle. A special weather statement has been issued for our region. Rain mixed with snow and much cooler temperatures are on the way. Full weather details are coming up. So the summer-like conditions for much of southwestern Alberta may be leaving us again soon. Jeanette Rocher is in now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, things should be cooling off quite a bit to the point where we may even see more snow.
Yeah, that's right. We can see this drastic drop in temperature right here as this cooler mass moves right through the region. And that is quite a drastic drop as we're getting into those minuses in the overnight. Okay, so we are seeing 30% chance of showers this evening. Tomorrow, rain on Tuesday, high of 4 degrees. And then Tuesday night, that's when that rain could be transitioning into flurries. Overnight, -3 for an overnight low. But by Wednesday, we're going to see the clouds start to clear up and start to see the sun shine again. And then that's it for the precipitation, at least for now. Anyways, 4 degrees for a high on Wednesday, 3 for Thursday and Friday, up to 10 degrees on Saturdays for a nice weekend there. A high of 15 degrees on a Sunday, which puts us back up into the more than average high for this time of year. It'll be higher than that. So average high 13, average low -1. 26 was our high temperature. That happened back in 1984 on this day. And on this day, back in 1953, we were sitting at a chilly -15. Sun rose this morning at 6:37 a.m. Looking at a sunset this evening at 8:26. We're looking at 13 hours and 39 minutes of daylight. Fairly sunny one on the west coast tomorrow, looking at these temperatures of 12 in both Victoria and Vancouver. Edmonton seeing showers tonight, could see 60% chance of showers or flurries tomorrow, high of 4 degrees. Calgary also under that special weather statement. They are seeing snow developing tonight. So 2 centimeters tonight, another 5 centimeters by tomorrow on Tuesday, high of 2 degrees there. As we look to the rest of the prairies, we're seeing mostly rain actually as that system moves into Saskatchewan. We're seeing a 60% chance of showers, both Saskatoon and Regina tomorrow, high of 9 degrees in Saskatoon, 15 for a high in Regina, high of 14 in Winnipeg. Winnipeg seeing a 30% chance of showers tomorrow. Now, as we get into central Canada, this is where things get a little bit more sunny. Not too bad at all. Clear skies in Toronto tomorrow. 15 for a high of 13 in Ottawa, and 12 for a high in Montreal with partly cloudy skies. More precipitation in the east, though, as we look to Atlantic Canada. Fredericton seeing clear skies, high of 14 there, 15 for a high in Halifax. Halifax seeing a 30% chance of showers in the morning. By the afternoon, that's changing to 60% and could see high winds there and fog as well. 14 for a high in Charlottetown, seeing showers there, and 2 to 4 millimeters of rain expected in St. John's, looking at up to 60 winds. Fog developing as well, 13 for a high there. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Many drivers are facing higher insurance costs as vehicle thefts run rampant across Canada. Industry experts say there are ways to help reduce premiums. When buying a car, drivers should be aware that frequently stolen vehicles such as Honda CR-Vs and Ford F-150s may come with a higher insurance premium or surcharge. Now, whatever vehicle you drive, some insurance companies are asking car owners to install an aftermarket tracking device called a tag system as a precaution. Officials at the Insurance Bureau of Canada says tracking systems lower the risk of a claim since the car could be recovered. Some insurance companies are also offering discounts or reimbursing the partial costs of a tag, which can cost a few $100s. Tesla is planning to lay off about 10% of its workforce after dismal first quarter sales results. The layoffs could affect about 14,000 workers employed by the Texas-based electric vehicle company. According to a report from CNBC, CEO Elon Musk detailed the plans in a memo sent to employees. Musk says Tesla needs to look at every aspect of the company for cost cuts and increase productivity as it prepares for its next phase of growth. Higher sales of petroleum and coal helped manufacturing sales in Canada rise 0.7% in February to $71.6 billion. Stats Canada says manufacturing sales were up in 13 of the subsectors that it tracks. The agency also says wholesale sales were unchanged in February at $82.2 billion. That's excluding petroleum, petroleum products, and other hydrocarbons, along with oilseed and grain. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 159 points on the day to finish at 21,740. The Dow was down 248 points to 37,735. The S&P 500 was down 61 on the day to 5,061, and the Nasdaq was down 290 points to 15,885. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 2 cents to 85.64 U.S. per barrel. Natural gas was down 8 cents to $1.69 U.S. Gold was up 38.97 on the day to 23.8334 U.S. an ounce, and silver was up 99 cents to 28.87 U.S. an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.57 per bushel, barley's at $6.44, canola's at $14.12, and corn is at $7.82 per bushel. Live cattle were up $1.40 to $1.80.30. Feeder cattle were up $1.95 to $2.39.55, and lean hogs May contract was up 45 cents to 94.33. The Canadian dollar was even over the past 24 hours at 72.52 U.S. Recapping one of our top stories, despite calls for restraint from world leaders, the head of the Israeli military says the country is going to respond to Saturday's missile and drone attack from the Islamic Republic in Iran. Officials say they're considering their next steps, which could include an all-out war between the two countries. As the war between Israel and the Islamic Republic in Iran escalates, there are some who are speculating that it could lead to a world war. We'll get the thoughts of our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, from the Foreign Desk on that scary prospect in just a few moments. Listen, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. Also, be sure to visit our website anytime to check out a number of stories and interviews. As we see tensions rise between Israel and Iran, many are concerned that we may see World War III break out. The Islamic Republic has continued its offensive against Israel, launching rockets and attack drones into the Jewish state. The U.S. is backing Israel, while Vladimir Putin and Russia is supporting Iran. Now, to chat about this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari from the Foreign Desk, who joins us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, first of all, you want to make it known that it's not Iran that's at war with Israel, but the Islamic Republic. Can you explain?
Yes. So for years, we've been trying to make this differentiation. And at this moment is probably the most important moment to make that differentiation. The reason why we differentiate between Iran, meaning the people, the history, the culture, the civilization of the Persian Empire, Iran, and the Islamic Republic is because not only is Israel at war with the government of Iran, the people of Iran are also at war with their government. So they don't want to be associated with this war. They're not at war with Israel. They're not at war with the United States. And for 45 years, the people of Iran have been the victims of this regime. Just like right now, the rest of the Middle East, particularly Israel, is at war with the government in Iran. So for that reason, we make the differentiation. In terms of strategy, we've also emphasized this differentiation because it would be a loss to the free world to abandon the people of Iran, who could be a great ally for us in this fight against extremism, against terrorism, against the government that funds all the terror proxies in the Middle East and is responsible for much of the global crises we're seeing right now.
Now, Lisa, it appears as though the Iron Dome is doing its job in protecting Israelis from that terrible attack over the weekend. Now, Israel's war cabinet is divided on how to respond to the massive aerial attack. They reportedly agreed to respond to the action, but differed on the timing and scale of such a measure?
Right. So within the initial hours of the attack, Israel's war cabinet met and they agreed across the board to, of course, respond to such an attack in the scale in which the Islamic Republic launched over 300 weapons into Israel. So now the question is how and when. So, of course, again, they are in agreement about there must be a response to such an act of war. But now, again, when will it be? How will it be? Will they go after their nuclear sites, military sites? Will they go after their proxies? They have many choices because of the way that the regime has expanded its influence throughout the region.
Now, with Vladimir Putin supporting Iran and the United States supporting Israel, Lisa, could we potentially see another world war? I mean, U.S. President Joe Biden has apparently already told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that the U.S. will not join a counterstrike against Iran.
Right. And you wonder sometimes why they say these parts out loud. It's not a good look in terms of optics for our friend Israel to believe that they don't have the United States' support, and for our enemies, the Islamic Republic, to know that as well. Look, no one really, the players here that are involved don't really have an appetite for a war. Obviously, Israel doesn't want a war. They never did. They didn't want one on October 7th, and they don't certainly want one now. With regards to Iran's regime, they are egotistical. They are rogue, but they are not suicidal. So they wouldn't want to take this war any further to escalate. As a matter of fact, within hours after they did this, the 300 weapons into Israel, they went to the United States, the United Nations mission and said, oh, okay, we're done. That was a retaliation. No more. We don't want an escalation. So a cowardly move, right? To say that, that was it. We don't want an escalation. They wanted to flex their muscles. They wanted to say that we're not going to take that attack in Damascus. We're going to have the final say. And here is the retaliation. Thank goodness, as you said, Israel's security apparatuses in 3 different layers. Obviously, the Iron Dome, David's Sling, and the Arrow are 3 different levels of protection for Israel. And of course, thank goodness, with the help of the United States, the UK, Saudis, Jordanians, they all rolled up their sleeves and said, we're prepared. We're going to stop these missiles and drones from getting into Israel. And they did. As a matter of fact, 99% of them were blocked and did not come into the country. So now the question is, where do we go from here? Will this escalate? You mentioned Russia. I just want to mention one thing to the viewers. Russia is a selfish participant. So when they say that they're backing Iran, they will back the Islamic Republic if that's what is in their best interest. But they're not getting involved in yet another war if it's not going to be in their best interest to move forward with their agenda.
Yeah, they're very busy in Ukraine as it is right now with a lot of their military. Lisa, the Islamic Republic in Iran has said it will launch even more attacks against Israel if the Jewish state responds. What would that actually look like?
Right. So again, this is a lot of that rhetoric, right? A lot of that chest thumping that we have seen from the regime at the same moment when they delivered that message to the United Nations saying, we're done, we're not going to move any further. Inside the country, a mural went up saying the next slap in the face will be much harder, writing it in Persian and in Hebrew. Funny that they would put that in Hebrew inside Iran. And also inside their state media, they were reporting a fourth wave of weapons will be going inside towards Israel, meaning, look, they want to flex their muscles. They have a lot of different audiences here to impress, right? Inside the country, obviously, we know there's a lot of disenchantment. So flexing their muscles, trying to get people to rally around the flag, it's not going to work. The Iranian people are not supporting this war whatsoever. They want to also flex to their proxies to say, look, we are the godfather of terrorism. We're the ones supporting you. So look at us, watch us. We're the example. So they're trying to, again, impress their proxies. And lastly, deliver a message to the West, the big Satan, the United States, and the little Satan, Israel, which they believe is the United States' little side Zionist project. And they have called out these two enemies from the first day the Ayatollah Khomeini came into power in 1979. These were the two sworn enemies. So they're just trying to double down on their ideology, double down on their agenda. But I don't think they have an appetite to escalate this if it were in their hands.
A lot of talk on social media is that Joe Biden's easing of sanctions on Iran has contributed to the most recent attacks, including the U.S. government releasing billions upon billions of dollars in previously frozen assets.
Right. So from the time that Joe Biden was campaigning, even before he got into the White House, he said he was going to get back into the Iran deal. And what did that mean? That means appeasement. That means removing vital sanctions. That means allowing Iran to sell weapons to Russia, allowing them to sell oil to China, allowing them to, go on and fund all of their terror proxies. And that's exactly what we have seen in the last almost 4 years. So yes, most recently during this war, so since October 7th, the Biden administration released another $10 billion waiver to Iran's regime. So it's really playing both sides here, allowing Iran or the Islamic Republic to get a different message. So while on the surface, you saw Joe Biden tell the Iran regime, don't. On the other hand, they're doing a lot to appease them and give them a lot of wiggle room in terms of their own economy and their military economy. So that's why a lot of people believe that this was, in fact, part of the White House's plan to appease the Islamic Republic, and that's what brings us to today.
Lisa, you remember a number of years ago when the United States government and the military took out Saddam Hussein in Iraq. Has there been any talk about potentially removing the Islamic Republic in Iran?
Right. So, there isn't an appetite in Washington, D.C. for any administration, Republican or Democrat, to use the phrase regime change. That feels, the United States feels like that is a stain on our history and that we shouldn't engage in regime change. But as you saw, if you juxtapose the administrations, whether it was President Obama and then President Trump and then again President Biden, Obama and Biden being more similar in their appeasement of Iran, removing sanctions, letting them off the hook, and you see the results of that, the consequences of that. And then President Trump, while he stopped short of calling for regime change in Iran, he called for behavioral change. And he had what he called the pressure campaign, which was to put vital sanctions, very targeted sanctions on the sectors of the regime that pertained to their nuclear program and their banking and cash and oil sales that would actually choke the regime to a place where, we saw the people of Iran as a result of that be able to come out onto the streets and feel like they had a place where the regime was suffering and that they could then come out and be that tipping point. Look, it will require both. It will require pressure from the West, and it will require the people of Iran to stand up in a grassroots movement against their government.
Late last week, the European Union imposed sanctions of its own on Hamas and Islamic Jihad for the sexual abuse of Jewish women during the October 7th massacre in southern Israel, Lisa. But what difference will this actually make to a terrorist group such as Hamas?
Right, and especially when their pockets are already being filled, and will continue to be filled. Look, 6 months after the war, we have to wait 6 months for there to be sanctions on an actual terror group, and we know that they're a terror organization. So then the question begs, why would the Biden administration, for example, take the Houthis, another proxy of Iran's regime inside Yemen? Why would they take them off the terror list when coming into office? Why would we play footsie with Hezbollah and Hamas and Iran's regime when we know what they're up to? Um, a lot of questions here. The fact that they're being sanctioned right now, that's great. But what took such a long time? There have been movements by different activist groups inside Canada, inside the United States, to make sure that the Islamic Republic and its tentacles, the individuals pertaining to these different groups, are not allowed to come into our countries, are not allowed to do business with our countries, and that the sanctions remain both on the country, meaning the government, and the individuals who are traveling freely throughout the world and spreading this disease of jihadism. So again, it requires a review here of all of our governments, Europe, Canada, the United States, to take a look here and say, what will our Iran policy be going forward? How will we deal with the Islamic Republic in the aftermath of this war so that they are not, they don't have the confidence to launch yet another war? Look, Israel should not be punished because it has this technology, right? So a lot of people are telling Israel to show restraint. Yes, thank God nobody got hurt. But that war that was launched by Islamic Republic was meant to cause casualties. It was meant to cause damage inside Israel. It was meant to start a war with Israel. So we can't excuse that just because Israel has the proper technology to protect itself. We have to ask ourselves, why does Israel have that technology? Because it needs that technology, because it knows that there are so many existential threats surrounding it on a daily basis.
Now, speaking of wars, the war between Ukraine and Russia is now more than 2 years old, Lisa. Let me ask you, is there any end in sight, any talk of a ceasefire or peace talks?
It doesn't look that way, but look, the money's running out, the weapons are running out. And look, if I were Russia, if I were Putin, I would watch what's going on in the rest of the world, particularly in the Middle East, and say, you know what, it's a free for all. I could do whatever I want. I would think the same thing if I were China, looking at Taiwan and waiting for that to happen. Weakness begets all of these different crises. And I think that we have to, again, here in the West, review our policies and review our foreign policies, which, again, should not differ from administration to administration. That is the one thing that keeps stability around the world, particularly in the Middle East, is that very strong deterrence, a predictable foreign policy that allows our friends to know where they stand, allow our enemies to know where they stand. And again, I don't think we would be in this situation had we had a stronger foreign policy.
Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is headed to the White House on Wednesday to meet with U.S. President Joe Biden. Now, Lisa, many would argue that Japan is fast becoming the U.S.'s most important ally. I'll tell you, a lot has changed since the Second World War.
Yeah, right. Japan is building up its military. It got the memo. It's seeing itself in a more precarious situation every single day, being in the region with China, with North Korea, and allowing itself the opportunity to work with the United States because of these threats. And that's exactly what we're seeing. They have worked very quickly to build up that military. And I think right now what we're seeing is these two countries getting closer and closer together in cooperation. A lot of aligned interests there.
You know, over the weekend, I was on social media and I saw a lot of these boats arriving on the shores of Southern California, illegal immigrants. They hop off the boat, abandon, leave it there, and run into waiting cars, and away they go, they take off. People are like, have these people been vetted? Like, what's going on? And it just continuously, so a lot of illegal immigrants and mass immigration in the southern shores in the United States.
Yeah, it's awful, and it really it's a disservice to everyone involved. Whether it's those migrants, the benign ones who are getting taken advantage of by the coyotes and others in the process of coming over. There's illness, there's disease, they're getting raped, they're getting robbed. all of that. Then we talk about the ones that cannot be vetted and should be vetted. You know how many people, we've reported on this at the Foreign Desk, have showed up in our country and are on the FBI's most wanted list. Let's talk about the ones who aren't on the most wanted list and should be. We'll find out soon enough. There have been so many crimes committed by undocumented migrants who are coming over. Obviously, we cannot vet them. We don't even know where they're coming from, and a majority of them are, well-intentioned but can't be absorbed by this country, and they end up, unhoused and unemployed. Look, the American dream is the American dream for a reason, and those who come over with the proper process get to enjoy those opportunities. But the way that things are going right now, it's a lose-lose for everyone involved.
But where's the U.S. Coast Guard to intercept a lot of these illegal migrants who are coming on shore?
Right, and we've seen interviews with Border Patrol and others, those authorities that are entrusted with that to protect the borders, and they throw their hands up. This is something that has overwhelmed the system, and unless things change in terms of policy, they will not be able to do their jobs, and that's the very unfortunate thing that we're watching unfold.
Political reporter and foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, thanks again for joining us today from Los Angeles.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Today, we're going to learn more about this type of cancer and what kinds of treatments and supports are available. Our guest has battled myeloma himself and is the head of the Lethbridge Myeloma Support Group. He joins us here in the windy city of Lethbridge. Brian Treadwell, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thanks, Nav. Thanks for inviting me to Bridge City News.
Great to have you on. So, Brian, can you explain to our viewers what myeloma is and how Canadians are battling this disease?
Okay, first of all, let's answer the second question first. Though classified as a rare disease, myeloma is the second most common form of blood cancer. In 2022, nearly 4,000 Canadians were diagnosed with myeloma, and currently 11 Canadians are diagnosed every day with the disease.
Wow.
Yeah. So as far as myeloma itself, and here's the medical part, and I don't want to get too medical on it, but it's a blood cancer associated with the abnormal behavior of uncontrolled growth of plasma cells. That's the white blood cell. Plasma cells are made in the spongy part of your bone, and they're an important part of your immune system because they produce the antibodies. Okay, and in myeloma, too many plasma cells are produced and they crowd out the good cells like red blood cells and platelets that our body needs to keep us healthy. And when you have numerous areas in your body affected by these growth, the disease is called multiple myeloma.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. And so what are the symptoms of myeloma then?
Okay, some of the common primary symptoms are bone pain, anemia, extreme fatigue, reoccurring infections, and kidney problems. However, anything unexplained should be referred to your doctor so he or she can refer you on to a hematologist, and those people are the ones that make the specific diagnosis.
And is there a known cure?
No, currently it's incurable. However, great strides are being made in increasing both the quality and quantity of survivability of diagnosed patients. A decade ago, the survivability was about 5 years, but now with research and new drugs and treatments, people are living 5, 10, 15, 20 years and longer past their initial diagnosis. So
Wow.
That's the good news.
That is some good news. And what kinds of treatments are available, and which kinds of treatments seem to be having the most success?
Okay, because myeloma is, well, I'd call it a designer disease. It designs itself around you. Your medical team will decide what's the best treatment for you. It's all depending on your age and your other health factors. You may have a stem cell transplant or not. I had a stem cell transplant. And since I had a stem cell transplant, even the protocol has changed for treatment then. So treatment is always changing for the better because they find all sorts of new things, new ways of treating it. So it's an ongoing process. So I can't tell you exactly what it's going to be.
Well, I mean, so you're a myeloma survivor yourself. So can you just tell us what life with myeloma is like?
Well, as far as treatments go, what are having the most success? Well, stem cell transplants, CAR T therapies. Your doctor sort of gives you a designated treatment plan to put the cancer cells into remission. And that's the best possible way because it's incurable. The best place to get is to have it go into remission. And therapies evolve. Treatment works for a period of time that you're in remission. But then cancer, it's smart. It adjusts itself to those drugs and it says, okay, I'm used to it, so now I'm going to grow again. So then you become what they call relapsed. So the doctors have to go and find a new drug to go on and put you on. And you go on that for a while and go back into remission. And then the drug gets smart again, or the cancer gets smart again and says, okay, I like this, I'm going to grow again. So this dance goes on and on and on until you get back in and you run out of known drugs and you're put into what they call refractory because you're at the end of the line. So what happens then is your team has to look for drug trials, which aren't approved, by Health Canada. It's not a known, produced, but it's done at universities and specific things like that. So you hope to get on drug trials, and a lot of people are on them, and their survivability is increasing again. So it's an interesting dance. Here in Alberta, the University of Calgary has world-class researchers, and they're coming up with some great new drugs. And I have one lady in our group that's been on there for about 5 years with a trial drug, and she was initially on palliative care, and she's gone to just blossoming on this trial drug.
Wow, amazing.
She's doing really well. So that's giving some great hope.
And going back to living with myeloma, in your experience, was there pain, discomfort?
Well, for me, yours truly, I have anemia, which gives low hemoglobin. So always being tired, and that's no fun. Of late, I've been dealing with having to go in for blood transfusions, and so it's an interesting dance. I had a stem cell transplant in 2021, and there's a whole battery of tests that lead up to going through that. And your doctor has to decide whether you're a good candidate for having a stem cell transplant. It's based on age and your health factors again. Now they're treating based on that whether you have a stem cell transplant or whether you don't, and your drugs that you take are adjusted specifically for that. So as far as day-to-day life, there's good days, there's bad days, there's in-between days. So you just, as Christy Lane sang, one day at a time.
One day at a time.
Yeah.
Now, do we know anything about what causes myeloma?
That's a good question. Everybody asks what causes it. We really don't know. We really don't know. Some say the environment, others say it could be pesticides. We're not really sure. No. The cure, that's what we're after.
Absolutely. Now, are there any ethnicities or age demographics who are more susceptible to getting myeloma?
Well, the median age for diagnosis is 65, though I've heard as young as 35. Primarily, it's 70s and 80s that get diagnosed. And there's more of a prevalence for Asian and Afro-American heritage. So it can be anybody. Let's face it, it can be anybody.
And I want to go back to your experience when you were diagnosed with myeloma. What was your reaction, and how has your journey been battling this disease?
Well, it's funny. I have to give credit to my family physician. He was tired of seeing me complaining about always being tired. So he finally said, I've got to send you to Dr. Benke. And my hematologist set me up to Calgary with a battery of tests. And I went back to see him for the diagnosis. And he came in and sat down beside me and took a deep breath and said, you have multiple myeloma. So I just went, okay, so what do we do next? That's the thing. I wasn't no woes me, whatever.
It just didn't phase you. You were just like, okay, how do we tackle this? How do we get this?
Exactly. How do we get on with it and live life and adjust ourselves accordingly? I wasn't going to give up and throw in the towel or anything like that. Okay, go with the hand you're dealt.
Well, what a great attitude to have towards it as well. Now, you lead the Lethbridge Myeloma Support Group. Can you share what a typical meeting might look like?
Have you ever seen a wrestling match? No, it's catch as catch can. We do a little bit of everything. There's no formal meeting because meetings get bogged down in red tape and all sorts of stuff. We sit around in a group when we can be outside because that's the best place to be. In the fact that myeloma, you're immunocompromised, so you don't want to pick up diseases from other people. In the winter months, yeah, Zoom is the preference, but we'll go to Timmy's and sit around and have coffees and things like that. But we'll go down to Henderson Park and sit around and share stories. The thing is, it's just being able to mix and mingle with people who share the same disease. And we all talk about how we react differently to the same drug, because, as I said, it's a designer disease. We all react differently to the same drug that we're given. The side effects affect us differently.
And to what degree does myeloma affect the way one lives their lives day to day? Like, are there certain things you need to avoid? Are there certain precautions you need to take? You talked about masking and being immunocompromised.
It's frustrating because at times you can't plan things. The way you adjust is the way it's individual. You'll hear a different story from each person that you talk to that has myeloma. Some are going on as if there's nothing wrong with them, and that's a great attitude, and that's good, So you just have to watch what you do. We're not skydiving because it involves your bones and things like that. Some of us don't ride bicycles or do things that will cause us, that will fall off, and hurt ourselves. Or, as I said, I'm not going in the wrestling ring, and we're not doing anything like that. Plans change. As I said, if you're not feeling good, it's okay to stay home. And when you're in doubt, talk to your doctor, talk to your medical team. They'll tell you what you should do or you shouldn't do, and talk to a dietitian if you need specific things you need to adjust for your diet, and things like that.
Now, this doesn't look like it affected you based on the way you responded to being diagnosed, but is it common for depression to set in? And what advice can you offer to help prevent this from happening?
Oh, yeah. I'm an old broadcaster, so I've got almost 40 years of faking it till I make it, okay? I can get behind the microphone and sound like I'm on top of the world, but behind and underneath, it's a completely different story. It's like a duck in the water. But, you know, any life-changing thing like diagnosis like that, it's bound to change your psyche. I admit every now and then I have a little pity party, but you've got to keep a positive outlook. Absolutely. Surround yourself with positive people. You know, read positive things, listen to positive music. Don't go on the internet. Oh, the internet, it's the bane of people with diseases because you get so much misinformation out there. And I'll say more about that in a moment. But the disease hasn't robbed me of my sense of humor. Maybe you haven't caught on to that, but Monty Python's, you know, always keep on the sunny side of life.
Life
You've ever
with
seen
Brian.
the video for that? Yeah.
And any final thoughts on winning the battle against myeloma, and any final thoughts in general? You were talking about misinformation.
Yeah. I always say to anybody I talk to, if you're going to go on the internet, go to Myeloma Canada's website, myeloma.ca. That's where you're going to find the most current information about myeloma. It's been rebranded and refreshed, and it's got the most current information, research, pamphlets, YouTube videos. It's just chock full of things. It has contact information. We have over 45 support group network groups across Canada. So whether you're in Sydney, Nova Scotia, or out in Tofino, BC, or up north, you're going to find groups in your province that you know, you can connect with, whether it be virtually on Zoom or, you know, in person, and get a hold of them. And any of the leaders will be happy to get a hold of you and talk to you on your level about where you are in your journey with myeloma, because they've been where you are. And that's the one good thing about it. We're not paid volunteers or anything like that. We're people who are living myeloma, just as you are living myeloma, if I'm talking to you as a myeloma patient.
Brian Treadwell is the leader of the Lethbridge Myeloma Support Group. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks.
I'm Naveen Day. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.